When a hotel bouncer threw a limping black veteran into the street like garbage, he had no idea the cripple he was mocking had once held enemy positions for 72 hours straight with a single rifle, or that the four-star general watching from across the lobby was about to end his career in under 60 seconds. Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from today, and if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. Marcus Webb had learned to make himself small. At 62, with graying temples and a prosthetic left leg hidden beneath worn khakis, he'd perfected the art of occupying minimal space. He moved through the marble lobby of the Grandview Imperial Hotel with practiced efficiency, his gait uneven but determined, a canvas bag of cleaning supplies slung over his shoulder. The morning shift hadn't even started, but Marcus always arrived early. 23 years as a night janitor had taught him that invisibility was a survival skill. The Imperial was the kind of establishment that polished its door handles twice daily and charged $300 for a steak. Marcus had watched it transform from a respectable mid-tier hotel into this monument to excess over the past 2 decades. New management, new money, new contempt for people like him. He swiped his badge at the service entrance. Access denied. Marcus frowned, swiped again. The same red light, the same harsh beep. A cold weight settled in his stomach. He'd worked every shift last week. His performance reviews were spotless. He was never late, never complained, never... Well, the resident fossil finally arrives. Marcus turned slowly. Trevor Castellano stood in the main lobby archway, arms crossed over his barrel chest, security uniform straining at the shoulders. At 35, Trevor had been head of security for 3 months, 3 months of escalating hostility that Marcus had absorbed with the same quiet resilience he'd learned in the mountains of Afghanistan. "My badge isn't working," Marcus said evenly. "Could you call maintenance to—" "Your badge isn't working because you don't work here anymore." Trevor's smile was a blade. He stepped closer, his boots clicking against imported Italian marble. "Management's been reviewing personnel, decided to trim some dead weight. You know how it is. Got to make room for people who can actually move at a reasonable pace." The lobby was filling with early morning guests. A couple in tennis whites paused by the concierge desk. A businessman in a $5,000 suit glanced up from his phone. Marcus felt their eyes like pinpricks. "I haven't received any termination notice," Marcus said carefully. "If there's been a mistake—" "No mistakes, soldier boy. You think we don't notice? You limping around, taking twice as long to clean half as many rooms? We've got younger guys lined up who can do your job in their sleep. Guys without—" he gestured vaguely at Marcus's leg, "defects." The businessman was watching now, openly staring. The couple whispered to each other. Marcus kept his breathing steady, his hands loose at his sides. 23 years, 9,000 shifts. He'd cleaned blood from carpets after a guest suicide, fixed burst pipes at 3 in the morning, worked double shifts when other janitors called in sick. "I'd like to speak with Mr. Henderson," Marcus said, referring to the hotel's general manager. "If there's been a performance issue?" "Henderson doesn't want to see you. None of us do." Trevor stepped closer, invading Marcus's space with practiced aggression. "You people are all the same. Think just because you wore a uniform 30 years ago, you deserve special treatment. Newsflash, nobody cares about your service. You're just another broken-down old man taking up space that younger, better workers could fill." "You people." The words hung in the air like smoke. Marcus had heard variations of them his entire life, before the army, during his service, after. But here, in this lobby full of witnesses, they struck with particular venom. "I'm going to contact my union representative," Marcus said quietly. "This isn't—" "Your union rep doesn't give a shit about you either." Trevor pulled a manila envelope from his jacket. "Here's your final paycheck. Minus deductions for the week you took off last year. Yeah, We tracked that, and minus the cost of that uniform vest you never returned. We're being generous giving you anything at all." Marcus took the envelope with steady hands. Inside, he could feel the thin stack of bills. 23 years, and they pay him off like a contractor who had overstayed his welcome. "You need to leave now," Trevor said loudly, projecting for the growing audience. "This is private property. You're trespassing." "I'm going." Marcus turned toward the service entrance, but Trevor's hand shot out, gripping his shoulder. "Not that way. That door is for employees. You go out the front, where everyone can see exactly what you are."
The lobby had gone quiet. A woman in Hermes held her purse tighter. The businessman's lip curled in distaste. To them, Marcus realized, he wasn't a veteran or a 23-year employee. He was just another inconvenient poor person disrupting their luxury experience. Trevor steered him toward the main entrance, his grip tight enough to bruise. Marcus's prosthetic caught on the edge of a Persian rug, and he stumbled. His cleaning supplies scattered across the floor. Spray bottles, microfiber cloths, the photos he kept in his locker rolling across pristine marble. "Clumsy, too," Trevor announced to the lobby. "This is what happens when you hire people out of pity instead of merit. Now pick up your trash and get out." Marcus knelt slowly, his bad leg protesting. His hands shook as he gathered scattered bottles. A photo of his daughter's high school graduation landed near a guest's designer luggage. The woman kicked it away with her heel. "Sir, please hurry," she said to Trevor, not to Marcus. "This is disturbing." "I'm handling it, ma'am." Trevor hauled Marcus upright by his collar. "Come on, veteran. Time to find a nice overpass to sleep under. Isn't that where your kind ends up?" The glass doors were 15 feet away. Beyond them, early morning traffic rolled past. Marcus had walked through those doors every day for 23 years, arriving before dawn and leaving after dusk. He had been proud of his work, proud of providing for his daughter's education, proud of maintaining his dignity despite everything. Now, Trevor was dragging him toward those same doors like a criminal. "Please," Marcus said quietly. It was the first time he'd begged, and the word tasted like ash. "Don't do this. I need this job. My daughter's medical school loans." "Should have thought about that before you got old and useless." Trevor shoved him forward. Marcus's prosthetic buckled, and he fell hard, palms scraping against marble. His canvas bag split open, more supplies skittering across the floor. Laughter rippled through the lobby. Not loud, not cruel, just the casual amusement of people watching someone inferior suffer a minor indignity. Trevor stood over him, triumphant. "Last warning. Get up and walk out, or I'll have you arrested for trespassing. Maybe spend a night in jail thinking about your poor life choices." Marcus's vision blurred, not from tears. He'd trained himself out of that decades ago, but from pure, concentrated shame. His hands trembled as he tried to push himself up. His knee wouldn't support his weight. The prosthetic's ankle joint had cracked in the fall. "Actually," a new voice cut through the lobby, calm and precise as a scalpel, "I think you should stay exactly where you are." The voice carried the kind of authority that didn't need volume. Conversations died mid-sentence. Even Trevor froze, his hand still outstretched toward Marcus. A man in his late 50s emerged from the executive elevator bay, walking with the measured stride of someone accustomed to people clearing paths. He wore a charcoal suit that cost more than Marcus made in 3 months, but it was the 4 stars on his lapel pin, small, subtle, unmistakable, that made Trevor's face drain of color. General David Morrison had the bearing of a man who'd commanded 30,000 soldiers and ended careers with memorandums. His hair was iron gray, his jaw carved from granite, and his eyes held the flat assessment of someone who'd made life-and-death decisions before most people finished their morning coffee. He walked directly to Marcus, who was still on the floor, surrounded by cleaning supplies and scattered dignity. "Master Sergeant Webb," the general said, extending his hand. "It's been a long time." Marcus stared. His mind struggled to process the words, the rank, the hand offered in assistance. Behind the general, a woman in an expensive business suit had appeared, the hotel's owner, Margaret Sutherland, her expression shifting rapidly from confusion to horror as she recognized the four-star general in her lobby. "General Morrison," Marcus's voice cracked. "Sir, I don't—" "Kandahar Province, 2003. Operation Mountain Viper. You held position on Ridge 47 for 72 hours. Alone. No support, no resupply, no relief. You called in coordinates for artillery strikes while taking fire from 3 directions. Your spotting was so precise, Command thought we had a drone overhead. When extraction finally reached you, you'd been shot twice, hadn't slept in 3 days, and were still returning fire." The general knelt, a 4-star general knelt on imported Italian marble, and helped Marcus to his feet with gentle strength. "You saved 247 lives that week, Marcus, including mine. I was commanding the battalion you were covering. So when I walked into this lobby and saw someone putting hands on one of the finest soldiers I've ever served with, I found myself curious." Trevor's bravado crumbled like wet sand. "General, there's been a misunderstanding. I was just—" "You were just what?" Marcus's voice dropped to Arctic temperatures. "Assaulting a decorated veteran? Mocking his disability? A disability earned protecting your freedom? Using racial slurs in a public space? Please continue. I'm fascinated by your explanation." Margaret Sutherland rushed forward, her heels clicking frantically. "General Morrison, I assure you this is not representative of our establishment's values. We have tremendous respect for—" "Do you?" Morrison didn't look at her. His eyes remained fixed on Trevor. "I've been staying in your penthouse suite for the past 3 days. Diamond Elite member 30 years running. I've watched your security chief here harass housekeeping staff, belittle service workers, and generally conduct himself like a fascist with a badge. But I wasn't sure if it was isolated behavior or institutional culture. Now I know." He turned to Marcus, his voice softening. "I'm in town for the Veterans Affairs Committee meetings. I've been reviewing care facilities, meeting with advocacy groups. This morning I decided to come down early for coffee and saw you get thrown to the ground by this person." Trevor's face had gone from red to white to a sickly green. "Sir, I was just enforcing property policy. He's been terminated and I was escorting him." "You were assaulting him." Morrison's hand moved to his phone. "I have the entire incident on video. I started recording the moment you put your hands on him, along with 17 witnesses in this lobby, all of whom I'm sure would be delighted to provide statements."
The businessman who'd been watching earlier suddenly became very interested in his phone. The woman with the Hermes bag studied her fingernails. The couple in tennis whites edged toward the door. "Margaret," Morrison continued, finally turning to the owner, "I'm going to give you exactly one opportunity to demonstrate whether your hotel's values are worth the expensive paper they're printed on. What happens next determines whether I recommend the Armed Forces Retirement Association continue using your hotel for our annual conferences. That's 400 rooms for 3 days every year. Or whether I suggest we take our business elsewhere. And our business is usually worth about $1.2 million annually." Margaret Sutherland's face went through several expressions in rapid succession: shock, calculation, anger, and finally cold resolution. She turned to Trevor. "You're fired, effective immediately." "What? Mrs. Sutherland, you can't—" "I can and I am. Clear out your locker. Security will escort you from the premises." She pulled out her phone. "I'm also calling the police. General Morrison, if you have that video, I'd like to ensure it's provided to the authorities. We take assault very seriously." "You take lawsuits seriously," Morrison corrected, "but I'll accept action over rhetoric. Marcus, are you injured?" Marcus was still processing. The general, Kandahar, Ridge 47. He remembered those 3 days like trauma-seared snapshots, muzzle flashes in darkness, radio static, the weight of the rifle barrel against his shoulder until his arms went numb. He'd been 29 years old, terrified, and absolutely certain he was going to die on that ridge. "My prosthetics damaged," Marcus said quietly. The ankle joint cracked. Trevor Castellano, Morrison said formally, you are under citizen's arrest for assault and battery. Margaret, call your police contacts now. I want officers here in 5 minutes. You can't arrest me, Trevor's voice climbed to a panicked shrill. I was doing my job. Your job is not to physically attack disabled veterans. Morrison stepped closer to Trevor and, despite being 3 inches shorter, seemed to loom over him. I've commanded men in combat. I've seen soldiers show more restraint under enemy fire than you demonstrated toward an unarmed janitor. You're a disgrace to the uniform you wear, and I'm going to personally ensure everyone in this city's security industry knows exactly what kind of person you are. 2 hotel security guards appeared, summoned by Margaret's frantic phone calls. They looked at Trevor, then at the 4-star general, then at their owner. The choice was obvious. Take Mr. Castellano to the security office and keep him there until police arrive. Don't let him leave the property. Trevor backed away, his earlier aggression replaced by naked fear. This is insane. I'm calling my lawyer. This is wrongful termination. You assaulted someone on camera, in front of 24 witnesses. Your lawyer is going to tell you to plead guilty and pray for leniency. Now, are you going to walk to that security office, or do I need to make this more difficult? The security guards gripped Trevor's arms. He didn't resist, but his eyes burned with impotent rage as they led him away. The lobby remained frozen, guests trying to become invisible, staff members watching with expressions ranging from shock to vindictive satisfaction. Morrison turned back to Marcus. Let's get you seated. That leg needs attention. Sir, I don't understand. Marcus let himself be guided to a leather armchair near the concierge desk. His hands were still shaking. How did you even recognize me? I make it a point to remember the soldiers who saved my life. After Kandahar, I tracked your career. I knew you'd been wounded in Helmand province in '09. I knew you'd been medically retired with honors. I tried to keep tabs on you, but... I paused, something like regret crossing his face. The system fails too many of our veterans. I should have done more. Margaret Sutherland hovered nearby, her phone pressed to her ear, speaking in urgent whispers. Marcus caught fragments, to full investigation, to every employee who knew, to liability concerns. Morrison noticed too. His expression hardened further. Margaret, I'm going to need you to focus on the immediate situation. Marcus was terminated without cause. I assume there's paperwork documenting this decision? I'll have to check with our general manager. General, please understand that I personally had no knowledge of, but your management structure allowed it. This man worked here for 23 years, stellar performance reviews, I'm assuming, never missed shifts, and your head of security, who's been here 3 months, decided he was disposable? The general pulled out his phone again, this time calling someone else. Stephen, it's David Morrison. I need you at the Grandview Imperial Hotel, downtown location, now. Bring your litigation team. He hung up and smiled at Margaret. It was not a friendly expression. That was Stephen Martinez, one of the finest civil rights attorneys in the state. He's also a Marine Corps veteran. He gets very excited about cases involving discrimination against disabled veterans. General Morrison, I'm certain we can resolve this internally. We're prepared to offer Mr. Webb his position back, full back pay for any... You're prepared to avoid a lawsuit. That's different from actually caring about what happened here. But let's establish some facts. Marcus, have you been subjected to harassment prior to today? Marcus hesitated. 23 years of keeping his head down, of absorbing casual cruelty as the price of employment. But the general's eyes were steady, expectant, and something in Marcus finally broke free. Yes, sir. Trevor's been... It started small. Comments about my pace, about my age. Then it got worse. Racial slurs, mocking my service. He'd schedule me for shifts that required climbing stairs he knew I couldn't manage, then write me up for not completing assignments. Last month, he destroyed my employee locker, said it was random inspection, but my photos were torn up. My spare uniform was in the trash.
Morrison's jaw tightened. "Margaret, were you aware of any of this?" "No, absolutely not. If I had been." "You would have done what? The same investigation you're planning now? After a 4-star general showed up with video evidence?" Morrison shook his head. "Here's what's going to happen. Marcus, you're going to receive full reinstatement, back pay for today, and a formal apology from hotel ownership. Additionally, you're going to receive compensation for emotional distress, documented harassment, and damage to personal property." "General, we can negotiate a reasonable—" Margaret began. "I'm not negotiating. I'm dictating terms. You're also going to conduct a full review of your employment practices, with particular attention to how you treat service workers, veterans, and minorities. That review will be overseen by an independent consultant, someone I select, and you're going to implement whatever recommendations they provide." Police sirens wailed outside. 2 officers pushed through the lobby doors, hands on their belts, scanning the room. Morrison strode over to them, his command presence making the younger officer unconsciously straighten. "Officers, I'm General David Morrison, U.S. Army. I have video evidence of an assault that occurred in this lobby approximately 20 minutes ago. The perpetrator is being held in the hotel security office. I'm prepared to provide testimony and documentation." The process that followed had a dreamlike quality for Marcus. Police took statements. Morrison's lawyer, Stephen Martinez, who arrived in a tailored suit and started taking notes the moment he walked through the door, began constructing what he cheerfully called an absolutely bulletproof case. Hotel staff appeared and disappeared, carrying files and whispering urgently. Through it all, Morrison stayed beside Marcus, a steady presence that transformed the lobby's perception. Guests who'd watched Marcus get dragged across the floor now approached tentatively, offering apologies, claiming they'd been about to intervene. The businessman sheepishly admitted he'd filmed the incident on his phone and would absolutely provide the footage to the authorities. Trevor was let out in handcuffs 40 minutes later. His face was blotchy with rage and tears, his uniform shirt sweat-stained. When he saw Marcus still sitting in the lobby, sitting in the space he'd tried to banish him from, his expression twisted. "This is bullshit!" Trevor shouted at the officers. "He's nobody! He's just a goddamn janitor!" Morrison stepped into Trevor's path. "He's a master sergeant. He's a Bronze Star recipient. He's a man who held position under impossible odds, while people like you slept safely in your beds. And right now, he's the person whose testimony is going to put you in jail." Trevor had no response. The officers led him away. Margaret approached Marcus with a folder of documents. Her earlier panic had been replaced with brittle professionalism. "Mr. Webb, we've reviewed your personnel file. We're formally reinstating you with full back pay, and we're offering a compensation package for the distress you've experienced. Additionally, we'd like to discuss a promotion to facility supervisor." "No," Marcus said quietly. Everyone stopped. Margaret blinked. "I'm sorry?" "I don't want to work here anymore." Marcus looked around the lobby. The marble that he'd polished thousands of times, the chandeliers he'd cleaned, the carpets he'd vacuumed at 3 a.m. while guests slept upstairs. "I gave this place 23 years, but I'm done." Morrison smiled. "Marcus, I think I have a better offer. The Veterans Affairs Office needs someone to oversee facility maintenance at our new transitional housing complex. It's a management position, supervising a team of 8, mostly veterans. Salary is $72,000 annually, plus full benefits. Interested?" $72,000? Marcus's throat tightened. "You'd be managing facilities for 200 veterans, transitioning back to civilian life, keeping their spaces clean, safe, functional, making sure nobody treats them the way you were treated today." Morrison's expression softened. "I can't think of anyone better qualified." The tears came then, hot and sudden.
Marcus didn't try to stop them. He'd held position on Ridge 47 for 3 days. He had survived being shot twice, had endured 23 years of quiet discrimination, had absorbed Trevor's cruelty without breaking. But this, kindness from an unexpected source, justice delivered by someone who remembered his service, cracked something deep in his chest. "Yes, sir. I'm very interested." "Good." Morrison gripped his shoulder. "Stephen here will handle the legal proceedings against the hotel and Trevor. You won't have to deal with any of it. Just show up to court when needed, tell the truth, and let the system do what it should have done decades ago. Protect you." Martinez nodded. "Mr. Webb, based on what I've heard, you have a strong case for unlawful termination, workplace harassment, disability discrimination, and assault. The hotel will settle. Trust me, they don't want this going to trial. Trevor will face criminal charges, and you'll never have to worry about cleaning another toilet for people who don't respect you." The lobby had returned to normal operations, but something had shifted. Staff members who had ignored Marcus for years now approached with quiet apologies. Guests who'd watched his humiliation now treated him with careful respect. The concierge offered him coffee. The desk manager asked if he needed medical attention. It was performative, Marcus knew. They cared because a general cared, but he'd take it. Morrison walked him to a taxi, insisting on paying the fare. "Get that prosthetic fixed. Send me the bill. The VA will cover it, but if they give you trouble, call me directly." He pressed a business card into Marcus's hand. "My personal number. You need anything, you call me. Understood?" "Sir, I don't know how to thank you." "Thank me by taking that job and making those veterans' lives better." Morrison's expression turned fierce. "Men like Trevor exist everywhere, but men like you, who show up, who do the work, who maintain dignity despite everything, you're what makes this country worth defending. Don't ever forget that."
The taxi pulled away. Marcus watched the general disappear into the lobby, already on his phone, probably making more calls, fixing more broken systems. He looked down at the business card in his hand, at the folder of legal documents, at the termination check he'd never cash. 23 years of being invisible, of being less than, of enduring. One morning of being seen. He thought about Ridge 47, about the way dawn had looked breaking over those mountains after 3 days of darkness, how he'd thought he wouldn't survive to see it, how he'd been wrong. The taxi driver caught his eye in the rearview mirror. "Rough day?" Marcus smiled. For the first time in years, it reached his eyes. "No," he said, "not anymore." Trevor Castellano was convicted of assault and battery 6 months later. He served 8 months in county jail and was permanently blacklisted from security work in the state. Margaret Sutherland sold the Grandview Imperial Hotel 2 years later, citing unforeseen operational challenges. The discrimination lawsuit Marcus filed, along with 17 other former employees who came forward after his case made news, resulted in a $4.3 million settlement. Marcus Webb became facilities manager at the Morrison Veterans Transitional Housing Complex. Under his supervision, the facility maintained a 94% resident satisfaction rate and won 3 national awards for excellence in veteran care. He hired 8 staff members, all veterans, and made damn sure nobody ever felt invisible on his watch. And every year on the anniversary of that morning in the lobby, Marcus and General Morrison had coffee together. Not to discuss the incident, but to talk about the men and women they'd served with, the battles still being fought for veterans' dignity, and the quiet victories that happened when good people refused to look away. Because sometimes, karma doesn't arrive in a blaze of divine retribution. Sometimes it arrives in a charcoal suit with 4 stars on the lapel, and a memory that refuses to forget the soldiers who held the line.
What would you have done if you were in Marcus's position? Would you have stayed quiet for 23 years or spoken up sooner? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. And if this story of justice restored your faith in humanity, Hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible tales of karma, catching up to those who deserve it.